YNW Melly has been behind bars at the Broward County Jail for over a year now. The 20-year-old rapper is being held on multiple charges over the death of his two close friends, YNW Sakchaser and YNW Juvy. But in early April 2020, things took a really odd turn for YNW Melly after he unfortunately tested positive for COVID-19, aka the coronavirus. This event had Melly's legal team scrambling to get him released early so he could receive proper medical care. But while doing so, the Broward County Jail also released jail disciplinary reports of YNW Melly. This report goes into intense detail of what Melly has been doing since he turned himself in back in February of 2019. Like who's sending him money, who's visiting him, and what his behavior has been like. And trust me, it is not what you think. YNW Melly has made it seem like everything has been all good since his incarceration, by releasing music, saying he's coming home soon, and even posting up a picture of the Versace shoes that he has in jail. But little do you know that he's actually been getting in brawls with inmates, making prohibited phone calls, and even flooding his entire unit on purpose. Curious on what else YNW Melly has gotten into while behind bars? Well, then we got you covered. Here is an exclusive inside look at YNW Melly's life behind bars. Now, for those of you who are unaware of why Melly's even in jail in the first place, let me give you a brief rundown. Back in October of 2018, YNW Melly's close friends, YNW Sakchaser and YNW Juvy, were shot and killed in an alleged drive-by in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Melly and YNW Bortland were in the car with them at the time, and drove the two to the hospital where they told the police what exactly happened. The police weren't buying Melly and Bortland's story, and after months of investigating, the authorities gathered enough evidence to assume that YNW Melly and YNW Bortland staged the drive-by and actually shot Sakchaser and Juvy themselves. Bortland was soon arrested on February 12, 2019, and Melly turned himself in a day later on February 13, 2019. If you want more details on that part of the story, you should check out the video we released a few months back titled The Criminal History of YNW Melly. A link to that video will be in the description below. YNW Melly currently resides on the 6th floor of the Broward County Jail. He spends his days hanging out with his other inmates and the general population, talking on the phone with friends and family, visiting with his legal team, and surprisingly, snacking. Financial statements show that Melly has multiple people that have been sending him money with deposits hitting his account almost weekly. The two most frequent people to send him money and care packages are his mother, Jamie King, and his manager, Jameson Francois. Between February 2019 and March 2020, YNW Melly has spent over $4,000 on commissary purchases, and on average spends over $100 a week. The items he's purchased the most are Oreos, Grandma's cookies, jalapeno pretzels, Doritos, stuffed jalapeno chips, honey buns, Flamin' Hot Cheetos, cinnamon rolls, and hot cocoa. It was also reported that Melly often buys thank you and miss you cards, pencils, pens, paper, reading glasses, headphones, playing cards, Spanish to English dictionaries, and ibuprofen as well. The way Melly gets these items is by filling out a form and checking off each item that he wants. Inmates in the Broward County Jail have, on average, about $22 in their accounts and have an $80 limit on food and over-the-counter medicine and another $80 limit on clothing. So in total, they can spend up to $160 per week on commissary items. Then, when YNW Melly is not going on a shopping spree in the jail commissary, he's often in the jail's visitation center. The Broward County Jail only allows inmates to have in-person visits with law enforcement, attorneys, and religious ministers. In the past year or so, Melly has had around 170 visits, with most of them being with his legal team as they prepare for his trial. Two visits that stood out were from an apparent prison minister named David Morgenstern, a man who has ties to the Trafficante crime family, also known as the Tampa Mafia. The Trafficante crime family were apparently the main mob operating in Florida and Cuba. David, along with his twin brother Fred Morgenstern, were members of the Trafficante family's network and were largely involved in the mob's investment schemes and money laundering that were funneling millions of dollars into banks overseas. The two were eventually caught and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. David was released in 2018 and started a non-profit organization called Last Door Incorporated. where he meets with inmates and discusses various topics revolving around religion. According to TC Palm, David didn't go into details about the conversations he had with YNW Melly, but says he's quite a talker and that he seems to be encouraging everybody in there. He's very enthusiastic. Morgenstern also mentioned that he hasn't personally met with YNW Melly ever since he was moved into a different part of the jail back in October of 2019, although he claims to still see Melly when he visits the pods every Thursday night. Now, aside from all the snacking and visitations, YNW Melly actually seems to be having a difficult time behind bars. Even though he tends to give this image on social media that everything's all good, according to his disciplinary report, Melly has had several confrontations with guards and other inmates, as well as violating several jail policies. These actions have resulted in privileges such as recreation, commissary purchases, and visitation being taken away from him, and he has even been sent to solitary confinement for days on end. The first major incident took place a month after he arrived in jail. On March 13th, 2019, Melly apparently made a three-way phone call, which is not allowed and is considered disruptive conduct. That phone call made him in violation of 3 jail policies, which resulted in Melly having to serve more than 30 days in solitary confinement, as well as all privileges being taken away from him. Then, 2 months after that, Melly was charged with threatening or disrespecting an officer. The details of this incident were not listed, but he was ultimately punished with 20 days of solitary confinement and a loss of all privileges once again. Several months later, in September of 2019, Melly apparently placed a towel inside of his toilet in his cell and proceeded to flush continuously until the top and bottom of his unit was flooded. The deputy who reported to the flooding said that YNW Melly admitted to flooding the cells on purpose and was threatening him. Melly was supposedly quoted saying, "Yeah, I flooded it. Now go get your sergeant. I'll beat all y'all, and I have real lawyers to get me out of it." The deputy handcuffed Melly soon after, and the entire unit was eventually evacuated. Melly was ordered to serve 20 days in solitary confinement, lost all of his privileges, and had 10 days of probation for all this. The most recent behavior situation YNW Melly had was in February of 2020, when he allegedly got into a fight with 5 other inmates in his cell block's day room. Multiple deputies had to break up the brawl, and Melly was charged with 2 violations. One was for fighting with another inmate, and the other was for disruptive conduct. His hearing for these charges was on February 23rd, and he was unfortunately found guilty and had to spend 30 days in solitary confinement and lost all of his privileges. In total, YNW Melly has spent 70 days in solitary confinement due to his actions behind bars. As of today, YNW Melly is still behind bars as he awaits his trial. In the beginning of April, YNW Melly tested positive for coronavirus, which resulted in his lawyer, Bradford Cohen, proposing an emergency motion to the judge for Melly to be released from jail and placed on house arrest so that he can receive proper medical attention. Fans on social media made it seem that this was his ticket to freedom after seeing fellow rapper 6ix9ine being released due to the same reasons. But on April 14th, 2020, the judge denied this motion and says that if Melly needs special medical treatment while in jail, he can just request it from the Broward Sheriff's Office. Melly is currently sharing a cell with another inmate who tested positive to coronavirus as well, and the date for his trial is still unknown. So, will YNW Melly get out? Now, that's a good question. You see, when Melly first got arrested and details of why got released, it honestly seemed like Melly actually did do the crimes he was accused of. But as of recent, the prosecutors in this case seem to have a tough time proving that YNW Melly and YNW Bortlen did this. In the recent bond hearing, the state of Florida showcased to the judge all of the evidence they had against Melly and Bortlen to charge them with the crime. But it didn't meet the burden of proof. AKA, it's not enough to prove they did it. The authorities in this case have also made several mistakes, with the first being the fact that they were unable to get any of YNW Melly's DNA from the crime scene, which should be easy to get since they know for a fact Melly was inside the vehicle at some point. The second mistake is that they didn't get a specialist to co-sign their theory of the bullet trajectories found in the car where the crime took place, which means that Melly can take some of his own money, which he has, to pay a specialist to look at their bullet trajectory theory and disprove it. If the judge finds the evidence weak in the next hearing and decides that Melly and Bortlen are not a flight risk or a danger to society, it's very likely that the two of them will be released on bond. But just because they're on bond doesn't mean they're free to go, since they will still have to be found not guilty in trial, which his previous lawyer thinks will happen after he posted this on Instagram. This will be a very interesting trial. I'm no longer representing Melly in this matter, but I predict a not guilty based on all the evidence I have reviewed. He has some very fine attorneys that I believe will be able to secure a favorable verdict. I also think that bond will be granted given the weakness of the evidence. Never rush to judgments in cases until you see everything. Hopefully, this all plays out in Melly's favor. Well, there you have it, YNW Melly's life behind bars. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button. If you want to see more life behind bars videos just like this one, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and feel free to click the notification bell as well to be notified when we upload. Also, comment down below on any suggestions of who we should make a life behind bars video on next. That's all we have for today's video. I'm out.